Okay, everybody, we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you, everybody, for being here on our May Marine Advisory Board meeting. Bridget, if you want to do a roll call, that would be wonderful.
Okay, certainly. Richard Graves. Richard Graves. Ed Strobel.
Here.
Christopher Rotella.
Here.
Steve Whitten.
Here. Good evening, folks.
Hi. Robin Chiarelli.
Present.
Thank you. Cliff Berry.
Here.
Bill Walker.
Here.
Ted Morley.
Here.
Roseanne Lovell.
Present. Happy May, everybody.
Katie McGowan.
Here, happy Mother's Day for everybody.
Aw.
Deirdre Bowling Lewis. Deirdre?
Sorry about that. Here.
Oh, okay, good. Barry Flanagan. Barry. Norbert McLaughlin.
Here.
James Harrison.
Here.
And Chair Grant Henderson.
Here.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We do have a quorum.
Wonderful. Okay. We're going to take care of a few items here. First, we have the Marine Advisory Board elections for chair and for vice chair. And we'll start with any motions for the chair position.
Mr. Chairman, I nominate Grant Henderson for chair. Ted Morley here.
You, Ted?
Second that motion.
And who's the second?
Harrison.
Thank you.
And Andrew, should we take a voice vote on that?
Yes.
Bridget, if you want to run us through a voice vote or a
Um,
individual vote.
Oh, okay, certainly. Mr. Strobel,
Yay.
Mr. Rotella,
Yes.
Mr. Whitten,
Gladly, yes.
Ms. Chiarelli,
Yes.
Mr. Barry,
Yeah.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Mr. Morley,
Yes.
Ms. Lovell,
Yes.
Ms. McGowan,
Absolutely.
Ms. Bowling Lewis,
Yes.
Mr. McLaughlin,
Yes.
Mr. Harrison,
Yes.
and Chair Henderson. Do you accept?
I do. Thank you. all
Okay,
very
that is
much.
unanimous.
Happy to serve for another year. Wonderful. Thank you. And why don't we move on to, do we have a motion for the vice chair from the Marine Advisory Board?
I'll make a motion for Ed Strobel again.
And I'll go ahead and I'll second that.
Okay, Bridget, why don't we go through an
Do it again?
individual vote?
Sure. Mr. Whitten,
Yes, please.
Ms. Chiarelli,
Yes.
Mr. Barry,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes. Yes.
Mr. Morley,
Yes.
Ms. Lovell,
Yes.
Ms. McGowan,
Yes.
Ms. Bowling Lewis,
Yes.
Mr. McLaughlin,
Yes.
Mr. Harrison,
Yes.
Chair Henderson,
Yes.
and Mr. Strobel, do you accept? Oh, I
Aye.
also forgot Mr. Rotella, excuse me, Mr. Rotella.
Yes.
Okay, and Mr. Strobel?
I accept. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we're going to circle back here. I did miss one thing. Do we have a motion to approve the April 1st minutes?
So moved, Ted Morley.
Second?
Second and Steve Whitten.
All those in favor to approve the minutes?
Aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Aye.
Okay, wonderful. Now that we have a little housekeeping out of the way, let's move on to item number 5. Waterway Crime and Boating Safety.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair,
Yes,
I'm having trouble hearing you. If you could make
Okay.
sure that mic is right in front of your mouth, okay?
sure, we'll do.
Thank
Sorry.
thank you so much. Okay,
Item number 5, Waterway Crime and Boating Safety Report from Sergeant Mills. Take it away.
Thank you. In the month of April, we issued 62 citations, 107 warnings, 11 safety inspections, handled 6 accidents. 2 of the accidents were damage to boats caused by large wakes, and the other 4 were boats trying to maneuver into docking positions. We handled a total of approximately 14 incidents. Of those incidents, several were with the jet ski rental companies, and then several derelict vessel issues. During the month of April, we were able, with the help of John Luscombe, to have 1 boat removed from Lake Sylvia that was in derelict condition. We also worked with a couple of the owners in the area. We had 3 other boats that were at risk of becoming derelict, towed out. They moved to different pastures. And then we also had one of the boats of the owner of the boat that was removed with the help of Mr. Luscombe. They had a second boat, and that boat sunk, and we're working with FWC right now to get that boat declared derelict and work on that one. The one thing that happened on the name of the boat that was removed was Mr. Magoo. We went through the whole process. Somebody who was having some financial issues. We were ready to go with the city to have it removed and destroyed. We gave her a little bit extra time. She actually came up with the money and actually removed the boat herself, paid to have it removed. Where it went to initially was kind of a little bit of a property that was being, the person who was living at the property was being evicted. So when the owner of the property showed up, he saw this boat being pulled into his backyard. Luckily, right at that time, he had called code enforcement, and so they came out and stopped that. So it wasn't an issue that was going to go from from water to land. Ended up taking it down to one of the local marines. So the good thing was, after all that being said, we didn't have to spend our grant money that was already pre-approved and everything. By giving her a little bit of extra time, we didn't have to use the money and then go after her for the cost, and it saved her a lot of money, which hopefully she'll have to get rid of the next vessel. So, no, exactly, yeah, right, yeah. She used actually a different company, and it sounds like maybe that company is going to be somebody who's going to be bidding on some future removals, and his prices are a little bit more in line with the people who are in some financial issues when they have their boat out there for a very long time. The other thing I want to talk about is we have the air show started. They started the air show today. We were out there, Blue Angels were practicing. They're going to do the full show tomorrow, practice, and then Saturday and Sunday it's the full show with everybody around. And it looks like the weather's going to be pretty good, so we're expecting some pretty big crowds on the water.
What time, like tomorrow, do you know when they're running tomorrow, and how long will you guys be out there for?
Well, we'll be out there from 11 to 5.
Okay.
They have flight restrictions, airbox restrictions, from 11:30 to 4 every day. And then the Coast Guard has the safety zone restrictions. Don't quote me on this, but I believe it's from 10 to 5. So usually what happens, as soon as the show's over, we leave and we get to the port as fast as we can to try to control everybody who's coming through the port. And people kind of take the hint when they see us leaving, they kind of leave as well.
Gotcha.
So
I would imagine you must be anticipating a large crowd this weekend.
we're anticipating a very large crowd because it's we're coming down the trail from COVID, and the increase of boating has just been phenomenal. It's just like every weekend seems like it's what it used to be, holiday weekends. It's just really, really, really busy out there right now, and I think that's going to carry over into the show.
Any other questions, comments for Sergeant Mills?
I have a question. The sandbars, both the triangle and the one in front of the yacht club, are getting increasingly used by commercial vessels, commercial charter boats, like the big tiki boats and catamarans.
Right, right.
Are there any restrictions on them or anything?
No
Enters into
restrictions.
this? Okay.
It's open to the public. It's open to them. So, yeah,
So I've,
we're seeing a lot of that too. The
Yeah.
tiki boats, the pontoon party boats. Yeah,
it's really increasing the amount of trash in the area there. And
it's getting, like I said, that the amount of boating traffic in the last, month and a half has just been insane. I'll take it back since COVID started.
Yeah.
I mean, we had that, they had to be 50 feet apart. You can only have 6 people on the boat. Everybody has to wear masks. I mean, we just seen an incredible increase. I was speaking with somebody down at Bass Pro Shops, and how they always had the boats lined up on 95. And I was like, hey, can you guys not get supplies? He goes, no. He goes, we sell them as fast as they come in. So the boat sales are just going through the roof. So.
And this is your last air show this year, right?
This is my last air show. Yes.
When do you officially?
I'm officially off the books in November, but vacationing and things like that probably the end of August.
Okay. Well, look forward to seeing a few more meetings, but we'll miss you for the air show.
I'll be here. Whoever takes over, I'm sure will do a good job.
Absolutely.
So,
thank you.
thank you.
Any other questions or comments for Sergeant Mills from the board? Okay. Let's go ahead and move on to item number 6. Dock waiver at 321 Birch Road, Lee and Patty Engler. And I believe we have Mr. Tyler Perry from the Chappelle Group to lead us through this one. Tyler, you there?
I'm here, but actually Steve Tilbrook's going to start it off.
Thank you, Tyler. Greetings, everyone on the Marine Advisory Board. So good to see you all. Thank you for scheduling this item for consideration. And glad we're getting out of this pandemic and recovering. So this application is for 321 North Birch Road. The applicant is Lee and Patty Engler. They have a 40-foot Sea Ray boat that they're hoping to put on a lift. There's there's 2 existing waivers that have been granted at this property for pilings, triple pilings that go out 75 feet, and also another boat lift at 55 feet. This application has been discussed with the neighbors. We do have some letters of support and actions of support from the Birch Point Condo Association that we can comment on later. And I'm going to hand it over to Kat Bargerzone.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to present this item tonight. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Hopefully everyone can see my screen. So as Steve mentioned, the applicant for this project is Lee and Patty Engler. This is the subject site right here, 321 North Birch Road on the Intercoastal Waterway. There's always a delay. There we go. This is just another aerial photograph of the site. You see North Birch Road, Seabreeze Boulevard, and our subject site. This is a view from the water in the central portion of the property facing northeast. This is another view from the water facing southeast. You can see these are some of the piles that have already been authorized with other resolutions. This is another aerial photograph, and you can see the triple pile clusters out here in the water. They're a little difficult to see, but you can see these are at the 75 feet from the property line. And you can see the channel marker is way over here. This is just another view of the property facing south. Again, these are the triple piles that have already been authorized. And you can see how wide the waterway is in this area. So this is a view of the existing conditions on the site. This hatch right here, this box, is the lift that was authorized by Marine Advisory Board and Commission for also for a no profile boat lift. And this lift was 55 feet from the property line. And you can see these are the triple piles and single piles that are at 75 feet. So this is slip 2, and we're going to be looking at slip 4 right here. So this location right here, slip 4, is where we are proposing a 51 feet from the property line, actually a 46-foot no profile boat lift. So the lift is 46 feet by 18 feet. And this is to accommodate a 40-foot vessel. So as you can see, the structure is 51 feet from the property line. The allowed distance is 25 feet. So we're requesting a waiver for 26 feet. This is just a cross-section view that shows the existing seawall and marginal dock, and then the no profile boat lift that will extend out the 51 feet. And this is just another view overlaid on an aerial. Again, you can see the piles that are already on the site for authorizing slips in this location, and slip 4 is the slip that we are looking at. And so here in the red is the no profile lift, 46 feet from the existing dock that's on the site. And here's just another view so you can see how wide the waterway is in this location. You can see in the red down here is where we have the proposed lift, and it's 562 feet across the waterway here. So again, 51 feet from the property line. So we're requesting a waiver for 26 feet. This is a picture of the proposed vessel for the site. Again, it's a 40-foot boat. It's a cruising boat. It doesn't have any type of tall fishing tower or anything like that. So it's a 40-foot boat that's proposed to go on this lift. Here are our extraordinary circumstances. I'll just run through these quickly. That none of these structures are going to exceed 30% width of the waterway. As you guys could see, the waterway is 562 feet in this location, so there won't be any issue with navigation. As I'm sure many people are aware, this is a high wave, high traffic, and high wave energy, high traffic location. And so you really need a lift in this area to keep your vessel safely moored during high wind events and severe weather, and even just every day, on the weekends especially. And this structure that we're proposing now does not exceed the previous resolutions that have been issued for this site. We referenced the 75-foot resolution that was issued for the piles, and also the previous resolution that was just issued for a 50,000-pound boat lift in slip 2 that was for 55 feet. And also this boat lift will also allow for light penetration that will allow light to get through to the benthic resources down on the bottom. As Steve mentioned, we have letters of support from many residents in the area, residents in the building at 321 North Birch, and then several residents as well at 301 North Birch, the adjacent property, that also are in favor of the project. Here you can see the existing waivers that have been issued in the area. So as I mentioned, the waivers have been issued for this property, and then to the south at 215 and 209 Grand Birch. There were waivers that were issued for 47.5 and 39.3 feet, and we're requesting 51 feet. And with that, I will turn it back over if there are any questions.
Questions from the board?
Chair, I have a question.
Go ahead.
Ted Morley here. Catherine or Tyler, I have you stated that the waterway is 562 feet across in that area, and that's, I'm assuming that that's wet face to wet face. Do you have the dimension from the proposed lift location to the eastern marker of the ICW? Because that's really a more important measurement for this, is how close it is to the navigational channel.
I do not have it offhand. You can see it right here. I believe it's over 100 feet. We already have authorization, or we're working on authorization with the Army Corps of Engineers and may review that from a navigation standpoint to make sure that we are at least 62.5 feet from that marker and from the edge of the channel.
I think it would help just to have that number in future proposals for us to look at, because we take that into account. I can see it on the picture there, so I appreciate that that image. Thank you.
Okay, we can make sure to include that in the future.
Thank you.
Other questions from the board?
What's the low profile lift look like?
So it essentially looks like an extension of a dock, and it has bunks on it that the boat can drive right onto. So when it's in the raised position, it just looks like an extension of the dock with the boat sitting on it. There's no piles that extend above. So the no profile, it's designed to be aesthetically pleasing so that you don't have the piles that you would see with like a 4-post lift.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Okay, let's turn it over to the public. Do we have anybody from the public that would like to speak? Hang on here. Okay, we don't have anybody from the public. We'll come back to the board. Is there somebody that did raise their hand there? What was her name? Is that Atika that would like to speak?
Yeah, that was just a test.
Oh, just a test. Worked. Okay. If there's nobody else from the public, then we'll bring it back to the board one more time. Anybody else from the board? Any questions, comments, concerns? For Catherine or Stephen or Tyler? Okay, if not, then let's go to individual vote. Bridget? Or do we, sorry, we
Need to
make a motion.
Mr. Chair,
I'd like to make a motion to approve. Roseanne Lovell.
Thank
second
I second that.
you. Who made the second, please?
Ted
Bill
Morley.
Walker.
Thank you.
Okay.
Oh,
That or Bill?
it's a tie. Okay. May I, Mr. Chair?
Yeah, please.
Thank you. Ms. Chiarelli? Robin Chiarelli?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Barry?
Approve.
Thank you. Mr. Walker?
Approve.
Mr. Morley?
Approve.
Ms. Lovell?
Approve.
Ms. McGowan?
Approve.
Ms. Bowling Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. McLaughlin?
Yes.
Mr. Harrison?
Yes.
Mr. Strobel, Vice Chair Strobel?
Yes.
Mr. Rotella?
Approve.
Mr. Witten?
Approved.
Chair Henderson?
Approved.
Thank you. That was unanimous.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your service.
You're welcome.
Thank you, everyone.
You're welcome.
Okay, let's move on to item number 7, dock waiver 141, Isle of Venice. And Andrew, do we have Tyler on this one?
Yes,
That's me
Mayor.
again.
It's Kat and I again. So Kat's going to do the presentation.
Okay, go ahead, Kat, proceed.
All right, I'm going to share my screen again. All right, so this waiver request is for 141 Isle of Venice. The applicant is Casa Murano LLC, care of Miss Madison Abel. And you can see the location right here. Again, just another aerial photograph. This is the Rio Grande Waterway. Isle of Venice Drive is here. Las Olas is to the south. This is a view from the northern portion of the property facing south. This is a facility that already has existing finger piers and existing mooring piles with authorized slips that have been in use for the past several years. This is a view from the southern portion of the property facing north. And here is an aerial view of the property facing west. You can see the existing structures that are at the site. And a view of the property facing east. So here is the plan view with the existing structures. You can see the existing finger piers. There's actually 9 authorized slips at the site currently, and we're going to be reducing that down to 8 slips. You can see the existing structures already actually extend 37.1 feet from the property line. And you can see the finger piers are 15 feet from the edge of the existing seawall. And this facility currently has about 35-foot vessels. So what we are proposing for this site is to authorize 8 slips with additional mooring piles and finger piers. Only the mooring piles will be greater than 25 feet from the property line. And this will be to authorize vessels that range from 35 feet to 44 feet. This is just a cross-section view. You can see the finger piers that are proposed and the mooring piles. This is a rendering that has been done for the proposed development that's happening on the upland, as well as for the new seawall and dock. You can see the finger piers. The mooring piles aren't shown on here, but this is what they are planning for this site. So here again is just a distance exhibit showing the existing structures on an aerial where you can see the mooring piles out in the water that are at 37.1 feet. And here we have what we are proposing. And since there were multiple piles, we've got 21 piles that we're proposing, and they're at different distances. So tried to make this as simple as possible and as clear. So we have them shown at 3 different distances. So all of the A piles are, there's 3 of them. They're 49.4 feet from the property line. And you can see this red line here is the 30% width of the waterway. So no piles and no vessels will exceed this 30% width of the waterway. So the A piles are the furthest from the property line. And then we have these B piles, of which there are 4. And those are at 44.7 feet from the property line. And then there's 2 C piles, and the C piles are 39.8 feet from the property line. And then we have the D piles, which there are 13 D piles, and those are 26.4 feet from the property line. So the reason that all these piles are at different distances is because the largest vessels are proposed for these middle slips, and then they're going to taper down in size as you go towards the adjacent properties. So the middle will be 44-foot vessels, and then they'll get smaller as you go towards the adjacent properties. And here is a zoomed out version where you can see that at the 30% width of the waterway, there's still plenty of room to navigate through this waterway. And the waterway is 164.6 feet wide in this location. Here's just another breakdown that I just went through of the different piles and the different distances. So the greatest distance that we're asking for is 49.4 feet, which requires a waiver for 24.4 feet. And then as you can see, the distances go down 44.7, 39.8, and 26.4 feet. And this is just another exhibit to give you a visual of the channel that is in this location, and that authorizing these slips and vessels to be moored in this location will not impact navigation and will remain outside of that 30% width of the waterway. So as I mentioned, nothing will exceed the 30% width, and that this waterway is 164 feet wide, and we don't believe this will be an impediment to navigation. These mooring piles are necessary to moor vessels of this length in this location. And the project is consistent with other waivers that have been issued in the area up to 80 feet. And as you can see on the existing conditions, this is an existing marina that had similar finger piers and similar piles. And so the intent of this project is just to revitalize this site and put in replacement finger piers and piles for the new upland development that's going in. So for neighborhood outreach, a Zoom outreach meeting was held on April 14th with all of the adjacent neighbors. So 151 Isle of Venice, 133 Isle of Venice, and 300 and 230 Hendricks Isle were all invited to participate in this outreach and ask any questions or concerns that they might have. And here you can see the other waivers that have been issued in this area. 91 Isle of Venice had a waiver for 45 feet from the property line. And then you can see over here on Hendricks Isle, there were other waivers for similar distances, as well as on the northern end at 440 Hendricks Isle. The waivers range from 30 feet up to the 80 feet. And this project has already completed all the environmental permitting. So Army Corps of Engineers, as well as Broward County, who issued on behalf of the state, they've all issued their permits. And so this resolution for the mooring piles is the last step in the permitting process. And with that, I'll turn it back over for any questions.
Chair, it's Tyler. We would be remiss to also mention that Barbara Hall is on the Zoom from Greenberg Charge representing the applicant, as well as the applicant itself. Chip Ablay is also on as well. So just wanted to make sure you knew that they were present and would assist with answering any questions as well.
Good, thank you. Questions from our board?
Yeah, I have a question. This is Steve Witten. Kat, can you go back a few slides and show the proposed mooring piles that you called piles A, please? It's like 4 or 5 slides back.
Yep. Probably easiest to see on this one. This slide?
Yeah, sure. So on that slide, the A are the proposed mooring piles. Can you show where the existing are there?
It's kind of hard to see. I think it's these dots here. So it's 7 feet further is the request, is the furthest extent that we're asking for. Okay. So let me go up one slide. So they're kind of hard to see on this aerial, but those are here. And so the A piles are out here 7 feet further.
Okay. I mean, that's just my concern, and maybe this is part of the fact that I'm familiar with it. I've seen, in these canals around here, there's a lot of derelict sailboats, a lot of liveaboards, et cetera, that well impede the canals here. So, there is some trepidation about increasing that. And you talked about new development. So maybe you could talk about how that might change who's going to live there as well.
Yeah, so Steve, the unit owners are the ones who are going to be utilizing slips. So you certainly aren't going to have clientele that you would have there now. These are high-end condos. So you're going to have more of not so much sailboats, but more of sea rays and the type of boats that you would see for cruisers and that kind of thing. So
understood.
And that's why we're losing a slip, because obviously we're trying to accommodate a wider beam. And so that's part of that as well.
Thank you.
And you had mentioned, Kat, that the max would be 44 feet.
Correct.
That you would put in there. Is that going to be regulated by the condo board itself, or how is that going to be regulated? Because if you have more beam in one of those bigger slips and somebody wants to put in a bigger boat,
Hi, this is Barbara Hall. I'm the attorney for the applicant, and I just wanted to say that our condo documents will include that restriction, and we're even prepared to have the waiver include the length of boat as a restriction. So either would be fine with us, but it will be in our condo documents.
Thank you for that clarification. Other questions from our board?
I have a question, Ted Morley. Looking at the slide that shows the 30% in the navigational zone between the vessels to the east and the vessels to the west, what is the distance between those two sets from your line across the canal? Because I understand the 30-30 rule here and the navigation of vessels going through the canal. But my concern would be everyone here is stern moored. So you've got vessels that have to physically pivot and back in directly into a slip, either one of yours or to one across the canal there. And during periods of high wind, which you indicate is one of the reasons why you want larger docks, increasing the size of the docks and decreasing that clear space would certainly pose a risk to navigation, if not a hazard, for getting those vessels safely in and out of those slips. So do you have that dimension of the remaining distance of the canal?
Yeah, it would be roughly 64, 65 feet between the proposed to the across to the vessels on the other side, assuming the vessels on the other side remain within that 30% as well.
Right. So we're potentially looking at having perhaps 7 to 10 feet on either side of the vessel to make the turn and make the back end into the slip then, if my math is somewhat correct. Okay. Thank you.
Anybody else from our board that would like to propose a question or have a comment?
I like the idea of the tapered boat slips for the neighbors. I think that's well thought out.
That's a requirement now, isn't it? I guess, is that a Andrew question?
Is it?
The step backs towards the property line? So I know we've had that issue on the Middle River with the condo over there. There's submerged land rights or something, I guess, stepped back.
I don't know if that's a requirement.
No, it's not a requirement. It was
Not
just
his property.
a design feature to also be, kind to the neighbors as well.
Okay.
In other locations, there is a setback requirement where you can't even have a vessel in the side yard setback. But in this location, it's in the city code that requirement is not relevant here. Because as you can see, all these vessels are within the side yard setbacks.
Yeah. It's definitely a high density area for vessels.
Yes.
One last question for me. Is this part, this waterway somewhat bend to the west a bit where it gets a little tighter as you go further north? Because one of your, I just wonder if this is a wider part of this waterway, or is this a thinner part?
It's pretty straight in this location. I don't think there is a bend on the Rio Grande.
There's a bend if you're heading north. There's a slight bend to get out on the main body of water there, but it's nominal, and I think the canal width stays consistent.
Yeah, because I just saw that one boat that's a bit north that looks like it's
Yeah, it bends up atop there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, if we have nothing else from our board, we'll go ahead and turn it over to the public. Do we have anybody from the public that would like to speak? Look like we have a couple hands raised. So Frank, would you like to start?
Thank you. Thank you very much. And good evening to the Marine Advisory Board, to Barbara Hall and others that are listening in. Let me identify myself. I am the president of Venice Harbor, which is a luxury group townhouses of 9 townhouses between 91 and 107 Isle of Venice Drive. 7 of the owners of these townhouses that are now valued in excess of $1,800,000 are boat owners. 7 of those have their own boats, including myself, who has a 50-foot Sea Ray. We have not received and never received any notice that there was a request for a waiver beyond the 35-foot markers that have kind of lined the Rio Grande Canal since we moved here in 2014. The construction of Venice Harbor was completed in 2014, and I've been the president of that association since that time. I'm also a partner at Nelson Mullins, Riley and Scarborough in Fort Lauderdale, and I'm also representing the association in this regard. We have great concerns for going out beyond 35 feet on an outside piling. I can tell you that there are many boats that are further south of the location that are larger, certainly larger than 44 feet. I know there's several Sea Rays that are at Aquamar, which are the facilities and the condominiums that were put up by the developer Francois Roy. And there are other boats that are south of that on the Rio Grande Canal that would have, I believe, a great deal of concern about extending out the outer pilings. The basic reason is very simple. We are able, with our 35-foot pilings, we are able to adequately situate as much as a 48 to 50-foot Sea Ray boat in the water, even through the hurricane in 2017. The possibility of extending out the pilings to the outer reaches creates a great deal of potential for mischief. And I can easily tell you that it's all you have to do is take a trip down the canal, and you will see that in fact on Hendricks, just south of the facility that you're now looking at, there is a 58-foot Sea Ray. I don't know how it squirmed in there, but it's on the Hendricks side of the Rio Grande Canal that is actually moored in only a 25-foot outer piling. And it's perfectly content being roped off and lined off and adequately protected in that smaller slip vicinity. No one. I only received notice from one of the neighbors further north of us that this meeting was taking place today, and it would seem to me. First, there's a couple of things that I take issue with. There are no 80-foot waivers on the Rio Grande Canal. There may be an 80-foot waiver on the Hendricks side that borders on Gordon, where that is a very expansive waterway. And I can understand there very well might be an 80-foot waiver there. I'm looking out my window right now at 91, and 91's pilings only stretch as far as the rest of our association's filings. I don't know whether or not the advisory board gave a waiver, but it was never utilized. And so I can go up and down Isle of Venice and Hendricks, and I often do in my boat every weekend. And I can tell you that there are no docks that go beyond the 35-foot limit. And the concern, and I also have some experience doing a lot of condominium law. It is very difficult to incorporate rules and regulations to limit the size of the boat when a new homeowner decides to buy a $2 million condominium on Isle of Venice and decides to bring in a 70-foot Choi Lee. And that would probably could be easily tied down and secured in a 50-foot outer limit piling dock. And so the concerns that we have is that it could create a real clogging of traffic going up and down the canal in a rather small small canal and certainly I would agree with one of the members of the board that if you don't have to look very far to go up and down Hendricks to see a lot of derelict vessels that are sitting there. Probably they don't even their motors don't run. And it's not a good sight for any of us living on Isle of Venice or on Hendricks. It doesn't improve our value. And I certainly am not here to complain about the progress and development that's going on in Isle of Venice. We appreciate it. We certainly do, because it helps all of our values. But we're just concerned about the traffic and the navigational traffic concerns that might arise out of putting and granting a waiver for what realistically what amounts to at least 4 slips that are going to go out another 15 feet. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. Next, we have a Neil Birnbaum.
Yes, hello. Hello, everyone. Our names are Ingrid and Neil Birnbaum, and we live at 220 Hendricks Isle. Just by the way, our block of townhomes was not invited to the April Zoom meeting for the neighborhood. However, in speaking with our Property Owners Association, there is an expressed opposition to this waiver request. So we would like to express our strong opposition to Casa Morano's request for waiver of limitations for the 22 wood pilings that are intended to extend about 50 feet from the property line into the Rio Grande Waterway between Isle of Venice Drive and Hendricks Isle. As was just said, the Rio Grande Waterway is a busy waterway that serves motor and sailboats, canoes and kayaks, jet skis, stand-up paddleboards, and large catamaran yachts. And on any day of the week, many vessels are either leaving their point of origin or returning to their home dock, and often vehicles cross each other. So any extension into the waterway will present a significant hazard to navigation. To our knowledge, we are not aware of any pilings in this waterway extending beyond the allowable 25 feet. Extending the additional 25 feet will impede safe boat traffic, as well as forcing boats to navigate closer to the west side of the canal rather than down the middle, putting boats that are moored on the west side in potential danger, as well as causing boat wakes to be higher and stronger on the west side, which also will negatively impact the western seabed and seawalls. A boat in the presentation slide for the 8 piles appears that will actually, during its navigation, run into the mooring piles, which is double the distance, which is double of what's currently allowed. So while the piles may not go beyond the 30% of the waterway, the boats themselves are fully expected to encroach into the waterway. Additionally, we've seen a variety of sea life in the canal: sharks, porpoises, manatees, turtles, manta rays, and forcing boats to jog from their normal courses would further endanger these animals. Finally, we'd question the suggested equivalence of where 80-foot waivers have been issued, because it's on a different canal. On the east side of Hendricks near Las Olas, the canal is significantly wider than here, where the Rio Grande Canal is fairly uniform. And lastly, allowing one development to have this type of a variance is fully expected to lead to further requests for extended pilings, whether for existing or new properties. So we do request that the Marine Advisory Board deny this request. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else from public that would like to speak on the matter? Okay, we can bring it back to our board. Norm?
Yeah, I
say?
have some concerns. One of the things that the Marine Advisory Board is supposed to be looking at is actually safety, navigation, and environmental reasons. And I have a problem with the safety of these structures. First of all, they're at the maximum of 30% of the crossing, and I agree that the size of the boats and everything else to come back and turn around. Looking at that, if I was pulling a boat out from across that canal and any kind of a wind or anything else and stuff on it, and there was a boat on the other side, I would be concerned too. I actually think those mooring piles are out too far. And I would agree with the guy that 35 feet would be more of a realistic figure than the 49 feet.
Mr. Chairman, may we respond to some of the comments that were made?
Yeah, let's well, why don't we I'm gonna get through our board's comments and then we'll reopen it up to you guys once we got
Thank
there.
you.
Bear with us. Anybody else?
Yeah, I'd have
Yes,
a
Ed Strobel.
couple of comments. One is that from looking at the Google Earth earlier, there's a whole lot more boats on the canal than there are in the pictures, and all of them really are 50 feet. So that seems to be a pretty. All the boats across the canal from this property are 50 feet. So 50 feet does look like the length that's okay, to be in the canal. If the dolphin pilings are out, at 50 feet, it does create a tunnel effect going down the center of the canal, and you easily could run into the pilings. I've taken a lot of what was said because I was actually thinking, yeah, that's probably okay. But listening to the comments that were made, I do agree that I also looked through real quick to see, all the boats that are on there and what kind of mooring pilings they had. None of them on that canal really are out that far. And there's plenty of big boats that are in there. I do think that 25 feet, like what you had just said, Norbert, at 35 feet would be a safer mooring for a 50-foot boat. But I don't think that it needs to be out 50 feet. I don't have any problem with the finger piers going out further. I think that would be better as far as safety for the mooring of the boat. A 50-foot boat is allowed to be there for the 30%. I think that tying up a 50-foot boat safely, stern to, would be the way to go with this. And so I do take some objection to the putting the A pilings out at 50 feet. I think they need to be pulled in.
Ed?
Yes, so I used to have a friend who lived on that island. He's since moved away, so no conflict, thankfully. But I used to take my 50-foot boat down there all the time, and it was tight back then. It's very difficult to spin one around. A twin-engine powerboat could do it easily, but trying to maneuver a sailboat in there or a single-engine vessel or anything else after spending 35 years on a waterway down here, I think is definitely pushing the limit. And if we allow one person to go 50, we're going to be lining up, and those people may not have the condo association to shut them down from going any further with a boat. So I think somewhere in the 35 range should be about our maximum for that entire strip of the waterway. And then we can kind of deal with it from there. But allowing one to go 50, I think we're going to be seeing people lining up, and then pretty soon you got a gauntlet, and you're going to be very difficult to run a single engine or a sailboat or something else down there without running into something as people get bigger and bigger boats. We had to draw the line somewhere, and I think 36 feet is about the line that I would draw.
But didn't we see when they were showing the other waivers that were granted, didn't we see one that was, 50, 49, and I thought there was one that was at 80 feet.
I think 80 on the far end. It's not actually, if it was 80 through the canal, it would take over 30%. 30% is a crazy high number for pilings because of the fact that you can have the boat sticking out further. I know they claim they're going to hold them back, but that's kind of a good luck with that kind of thing. But I thought 80 footers, no way that's in that same area. I think it's way south where it's on the same street, but it's going into that open waterway, not actually the canal between Hendricks and Venice.
Can we see that slide again? Is that possible and then we can take a look at where they were?
Can you see my screen?
Yes.
So yeah, the 80 foot is down here.
One thing with the 35-foot pile, that seems to be the acceptable amount that you will have no problem with the neighbors or anything else. Seems like they were in agreement that 35 would be adequate, would be fine for the neighborhood and stuff over there. So you probably wouldn't have the objection of you would have the neighbors as far as the safety or navigation problems. So to appease neighbors and everything else, and that does sound like a realistic figure.
Well, I mean, I'm just looking, we have 91 received a 45-foot waiver, and 440 got a 39-foot waiver. I mean, my concern here is just precedent, right? The reason to grant a waiver is extraordinary circumstance. It's not defined under the law. So it's left to this board and why we grant the waivers to define what extraordinary circumstances means. And that means that it's created by what we do, the precedent. So now we have Isle of Venice, and we've granted a waiver at 91 for 45 feet and 440 for 39 feet. And I'm hearing that it really should have been 36 feet. And the subject site, which is asking for 49.4 feet, is too big. So we have to reconcile that in order to be within our existing precedent.
We could start a new precedent now and focus on 36 feet.
Agree.
But then you have to, but the problem is your new precedent then suggests that your old precedent is wrong. And you're going to have to reconcile that.
Then it sounds like the old precedent was wrong, and it sounds like we've learned from doing that, and that moving forward, it sounds like that the thing would be best is to have it at 36 feet.
But if you're not
sounds like they gave it a shot.
Consistent, then you can change your precedent every time you get a waiver.
It's happened on other places as well.
Consistently wrong.
We've been overridden by city council because we went with our precedent before, and I'm not a big fan of that one either. I think we need to look at each one of these and maybe set a new precedent. A lot of people may not have been on that board, and it might have been people who have never taken a boat down there. But from those of us who have driven boats down there, I wouldn't want to do it with a bunch of piles of 50 all the way for sure.
Yeah,
Sure.
I think. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, Ted, go ahead, and then we'll get to Steve.
Thank you, Ted Morley. The function of the board to me is to evaluate each individual waiver request. We take the existing waivers in the vicinity as a reference, but by no means is it establishing a precedence. The precedence that is set is 25 feet for fixed structures as per the code. That is our precedence. Everything else is an extraordinary circumstance requiring a vote on each individual waiver request. So whereas I agree with some of the statements that we have to look at the overall precedents that are there, I feel that the overall precedence being 25 feet is completely adequate and correct per the code. When we look at the various things, as Deidre pointed out, with an extraordinary circumstance, to me, this is a developer looking for a development question as part of his site review plan, not an extraordinary circumstance. That's my impression of this. If that's incorrect, please correct me. But to me, I think the code handles that. There is no extraordinary circumstance here in this case. And it's not for us to tell the applicant to pull their request to 35 feet, because I don't believe we can do that. I believe we have to vote on the measure as it's presented to us at this time.
Correct.
I think that's well stated. There is no extraordinary circumstance as presented.
Is there a way that we can approve it at 36 feet? Is that something that you can do or no?
Andrew, go ahead.
This is Andrew. No, we're here looking at this particular application tonight based on these dimensions.
They could always come back to us, but
May I?
yes.
May I speak?
One second. Is there Steve? Did you have something to say?
I did have one other point. I think that Steve Whitten, I think that Deidre makes a very good point, but I think that, and we're doing this every month we meet, is we're adapting our current circumstances to the current situations. And I think the point that was made by Ed is that the fact that other situations were approved by no means should be a precedent of what we do today. Unfortunately, the area is very congested, and I think the presentation was extremely well done, but realistically, it's not showing the big sailboats that are currently sitting there and the current situation. And I think that it's not just an issue that Mr. Terzo can't get his 50-foot boat down there. You can't get two 16-foot whalers passing side by side in these canals. And I think it's a true concern. So I believe that I'm not talking about establishing a precedent. I do believe that you adjust your circumstances to each situation. But in this situation, I do believe it comes out too far.
Okay, anybody else from the board before we allow?
Chair?
Yes, go ahead.
Cliff Berry. There was a comment made about voting on this as is without modifications on the fly. But if someone can correct me if I'm wrong, isn't in the past that the applicant, we have made recommendations during a meeting and the applicant, maybe not recommendations, but had concerns, and the applicant had counseled with their consultant during the meeting, and we had agreed to something different? Or am I thinking of, am I not correct?
I think we had made suggestions and they've gone back and changed them and came back to us the next month. Am I?
Okay. If that's the case, that's what I was thinking of then.
Can we approve contingent upon certain
No.
changes?
The challenge is the plans must represent the resolution must represent the plans, and
Right.
a different set of plans would be required for a different set of dimensions. Historically, the board has added to the motion certain restrictions on the size of a vessel. But as far as the size of the plans go, that would require a return to the board.
Right. And I believe that they said that
Mr. Chair.
they would be okay with us putting in a vessel size restrictions. Unless anybody else, we turn it back over to Barbara, Kat, Tyler to respond.
Yeah, I think it seems appropriate, given the difficulty of us consulting on Zoom, to ask if we could continue this to consider all the comments we've heard tonight and give us the opportunity to consider whether to change the plans that we bring before you. So
Sure.
we request that it be continued.
Andrew, that's fine.
Absolutely. Yes, that's fine.
Do we need a motion to table, or is the applicant's request sufficient, Andrew?
No motion required.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, then why don't we move on to item number 8 here, dock waiver at 1207 Seminole Drive.
The chair, for Jenna's going to do the presentation, I just wanted to say that we are here on behalf of Bill and Bill Schaefer and his wife at 1207, who has been a 40-year resident of Broward in the area. And he has no intention of doing anything to stir up the neighborhood. He simply is trying to bring his vessel into his property and stay within the code limits of his side yard setbacks. So you're going to hear tonight a presentation on how that we came up with a design that we could do that, which in turn requires us to have a waiver tonight. It's one of the properties in Fort Lauderdale that is kind of like a triangle. If you were to take the riparian and rights lines and extend them, it makes a triangle. So we have to fit everything within the triangle. So you'll see within the presentation, this is consistent with a lot of the docks in the Seminole Lake. And you will hear concerns from adjacent property owners that it will impact their navigation as well as their views. I agree with the previous discussions we had, or I heard this evening, that it's the board's purview to look at safety and navigation for these waivers that come before you. And we've looked at that in our presentation and presented that. And the concerns that you're here will be coming from people who also have the same type of mooring that we're proposing. and they have not gotten a waiver, or they were not required to get a waiver because they kept their structures at 25 feet, but are med style mooring their vessels out into the lake because they don't have proper structures in place to moor their vessels safely. So we're going to go through that, but I wanted to give you that summary, as that's kind of the approach this evening. It's not our typical approach, but given some of the comments that we received during our outreach and with the comments that we received from the neighbors, not directly from the applicant, but in fact through the city. So with that, I asked Jenna to please present.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for your time and consideration. My name is Jenna Robbins, and as Tyler stated, we are presenting on behalf of Bill and Vicki Schaefer, the property owners of 1207 Seminole Drive in Fort Lauderdale. Their property is located on Lake Seminole, just north of Sunrise Boulevard. And here's a zoomed in aerial showing their property with Lake Seminole right there in the middle, Intercoastal Waterway, and Sunrise is to the south. And here's a picture located on the property in the northeast corner facing southwest. They currently have a wood marginal dock. And another picture from the southwest corner of the property facing northeast. And here's an aerial view of the property taken from year 2020. And you can see their house is the one with the red pin on it, and they have the wood marginal dock. And here's another aerial from 2018. They previously had a wood marginal dock, but also had a finger pier and about 6 wood mooring piles that extended into the lake. And then here's another aerial view facing west from 2020, showing the current conditions with the wood marginal dock. And another aerial view facing east from the year 2018 with their previous structures of the marginal dock, finger pier, and mooring piles. And as you can see, all within Lake Seminole, other property owners have finger piers and mooring piles extending out into the water. The previous structures at this property extended about 24 feet from the property line, and the mooring piles extended about 30 to 33 feet from the property line. So currently at the property, they have an existing wood marginal dock that is about 550 square feet. It is 53.3 feet long and 10.3 feet wide. And as Tyler previously stated, it's a unique property as the 2 side property lines angle towards one another, and they come to a point up here within the water. So then there is also a 10-foot side yard setback required for mooring vessels at this property, as it is zoned as an RS 4.4 district. So no vessels are allowed within this area right here on the north and south side of the property. So that only leaves about 33.3 feet of length of dock right here to moor a vessel. The proposed project consists of a new wood finger pier that is 25 feet by 4 feet wide, and the installation of a wood mooring pile that extends 20 feet past that finger pier. So overall, the finger pier would extend 33 feet from the property line, and the mooring pile would extend 53.5 feet from the property line. As these distances exceed the 25 feet from the property line, as mandated in the city code, we are requesting a waiver tonight of 8 feet for the finger pier and a waiver for 28.5 feet for the mooring pile. And these structures are necessary to accommodate a 60-foot vessel and a 25-foot vessel. And this was the most practical layout to accommodate these vessels, given that there's only 32 feet a length of dock right here to keep the vessels outside of this 10-yard setback. I mean, side yard setback. And here's a sectional view of the proposed project. There's an existing coral wall and a wood marginal dock. And the project consists of the installation of this 25-foot wood finger pier that extends 33 feet from the property line, and the wood mooring pile that extends 53.5 feet from the property line. So here are the existing conditions again, overlaid on an aerial. You can see the width of the waterway is about 330 to 335 feet wide in this particular location. And the existing wood marginal dock is shown in orange. And here are the proposed conditions overlaid on an aerial. These structures are consistent with other structures located within Lake Seminole with finger piers and mooring piles. And this was the most practical layout to accommodate these two vessels to keep them outside of this 10-foot setback. And here's an exhibit showing the distance that other structures within Lake Seminole and how far they exceed or how far they are from the property line. Down here, we're requesting 33 feet for the finger pier and 53.5 feet for the mooring pile. However, there are other structures within Lake Seminole that are to code that extend 15 feet from the property line to 24 feet from the property line. However, there are finger piers and mooring piles that extend 30 feet from the property line to 35 feet, all the way out to 55 feet from the property line. And then there are also vessels that extend as far as 65 feet to 83 feet from the property line and 45 feet, just to give you a general idea of how far these vessels extend into the waterway. So here's a table of the neighboring structures that exceed the distance of 25 feet from the property line for the city code. There was no record of a waiver being obtained for these structures, and an internet search through the county and state environmental resource portals did not show any permits being obtained either. And you can see that these structures extend 30 to 55 feet from the property line. And here are just some aerial views of these properties that exceed the 25 feet from the property line. Most of these properties have finger piers and mooring piles as the applicant is requesting, and they extend 35 feet all the way to 55 feet from the property line. And here are some more that also have finger piers and mooring piles that are 33 to 30 feet from the property line. So overall, we're requesting a waiver for a finger pier to extend 33 feet from the property line, which would require a waiver of 8 feet, and a mooring pile to extend 53.5 feet from the property line, which requires a waiver for that 28.5 foot distance. The extraordinary circumstances that warrant this waiver request include that all the structures and piles proposed do not exceed 30% the width of the waterway, as the waterway is approximately 330 feet at this particular location. It will not impede navigation. These structures are also necessary for safely mooring the residents' vessels during high wind events and severe weather. And most importantly, the angle of the applicant's property lines, due to the unique shape of the property, do not provide adequate length along the existing dock to moor parallel to the dock for a 60-foot boat. And since we're also trying to adhere to the 10-foot side yard setback required in this zoning, this is the most practical layout to do so to accommodate the applicant's 60-foot vessel. And regarding navigation within Lake Seminole, here's an example of the turning radius of a 120-foot boat. And they have plenty of room to turn around in this basin. However, most of the vessels that are moored within Lake Seminole do not exceed 90 to 100 feet in length. So even with the proposed structures and the mooring of the applicant's vessel, which is consistent with other properties within Lake Seminole, that will not impede the navigation of others within the lake. And just to reiterate, the applicant previously had a finger pier and mooring piles at this location and wishes to reconfigure his existing facility, or not facility, his dock, so that he can accommodate the 60-foot vessel, which he previously had, or he had a similar boat here, moored perpendicular to the property, which is similar to other property owners on Lake Seminole. And 4 letters of support were obtained from neighboring properties. And just to note that one of the property owners at 1201 Seminole Drive, the letter of support was revoked and then the property was sold. And there are a few existing waivers within the vicinity of the proposed project. However, most of these waivers were obtained in Sunrise Bay, located just east of where the property is, and there was no record of any waivers being obtained within Lake Seminole. And with that, I thank you for your time, and I'll open up to any questions.
Yeah, just to further, Chair, on that is that, you know, the moral of the story is that we're trying to do the right thing and get a waiver, even though everybody else on the lake doesn't have them when they're supposed to have them. So we don't think that we're being inconsistent with what it has been being utilized in the lake as far as navigation and safety. People are utilizing the lake and turning radius we presented. So we would like to request your the board's approval, given the ability to moor perpendicular at this location, given that it was previously there, and 2, that the vessel size that we're proposing is consistent with vessels in that lake. Thank you.
Thank you, Tyler. Okay, let's have some discussions at a board level here. We'll go with Ted and then for Ed Stroll.
Great. Thank you, Chair. Ted Morley speaking. Jenna, can we go back to the plan view that shows the 2 slips that you're looking at putting in, that has the triangle with the riparian extensions from the nearby properties? And while you're getting back to that, I'll make my questions and point and comments here. My concern, and great presentation, by the way, very detailed. Love the turning radius. My concern is this is a very unique property. As you stated, it's a triangular shaped property. So a lot of the other properties in the area that have larger vessels or larger structures are not. So the interference issues that I perceive here, particularly with, I believe it's the house to the left is 1201. It's a concern for me for that person getting in and out of their slip, particularly with that 53-foot mooring pile. you actually have a better view that shows not the aerial but the close up of the plan that shows the two vessels just in a line drawing, the 60-footer and the 25-footer. My concern is that both of them appear, at least in your drawing, to be pretty much hard against the current marginal dock. And obviously we know that's not going to be the case. They're going to have to be out away from that for surge and all that. So that's going to put both of those vessels potentially into that 10-foot setback from the side yard. So whereas we keep talking about a 60-foot boat going in there, obviously we're actually seeing a plan for two slips, a 60-foot boat and potentially a 25-foot boat. And my concern over this is access for the neighbor at 1201 and his safety of navigation coming and going from his dock. And have you addressed that? And do you have an idea of how that's going to work?
Yeah, so the access for 1201 is similar to the access for 1207, and that property also is a triangle. So you have right now, he has a finger pier with a boat lift on one side. He obviously would be utilizing the slip perpendicular as well, like he is now with the boat lift and then the slip on the other side. So he would be coming in, towards the property and mooring perpendicular to the property like we're proposing. So he wouldn't be coming in at an angle, from the north to the south into the dock as if it was marginal. He would be coming in from the south, or let's see, northwest into the slip.
Okay, and follow up to that, the current vessel there is looks like it's a smaller, like a 40-ish Intrepid or so. The 60-foot boat that the applicant is planning on putting there, does he own that vessel now? And if he does, can you give us some idea of what
So
what size it is, dimensions and such, beam?
Yeah, the existing vessel is 42 Intrepid, center console, and the applicant is obviously getting older and not more of a cruising type vessel than a center console, and they're going with a 60-foot azimuth, which is similar to, if you look at this picture, this boat to the left here on this property, that's a 55 azimuth.
Gotcha.
Okay, thank you, Tyler.
Yep.
Ed Strobel?
Yes, I've got quite a few concerns with this. So 1201 gave their permission, then took it back because I assume because they were selling the house and they no longer were there. But in looking toward the future, if we did the same thing for 1201, there'd be no way for that smaller boat to get out, it looks like. And in order for that smaller boat to get out, they're going to have to cross over the riparian rights at about the 40-foot mark from the next door neighbor. So kind of thinking toward the future, when this smaller house gets torn down, what would their plans be if we approved the exact same thing for the next door neighbor? They would now be landlocked.
Actually, no, it's the same geometry. So as you go around this teardrop of the lake, everybody has a piece of the pie. So everything is drawn as far as your riparian rights to the center point of the lake. And then you have to take your setbacks from your property lines. So everybody has access to the center point of the lake and has the ability to come into their property. So the person that builds at 1201, which I'm sure they're going to tear down this property, they're tearing down this house and come in with a new dock in a perpendicular fashion. This property over to the left of them has a line that runs directly also at an angle towards the point of our triangle as well. So they are going to come out to the point of the triangle as if the person to the left of them would as well. So everybody goes out towards the center point of the lake to get out from their property to then traverse up the canal.
I don't see how the smaller vessel could get out unless the larger vessel was there without going into the rights of the 1201 inside the 50-foot point. There's a piling right smack in the way for them to get out. So look at the smaller boat and tell me how that's going to get out with that 50-foot piling there without crossing over the line into the neighbors, if assuming he's out 53 feet as well.
Right, but his pile would not be crossing over in front of his boat at all.
Yeah.
It would be inside his riparian line, which would be a straight line going almost due north.
Yeah, I don't see how you could get that boat out of there without hitting something, but I just don't see a property with this small of a water frontage being able to handle that size of vessel. I mean, I hate to be the guy.
Well,
but,
it may not. I mean, 1201 may not be able to have a 60-foot boat.
well, I'm talking about the subject property may not. I just don't. That boat looks way too large for that property for safe navigation for everybody around it. But again, that's just
Well, I mean, the gentleman who has the 42 now has the boat to the north. And Jenna, if you can show the perpendicular mooring for the neighbor to the north of 1207, he has a perpendicular boat that's about 60 feet. And Mr. Schaefer gets into his marginal dock now with that there. So you see here, he's got two boats, one's parallel and one's perpendicular. So the same design. Now, if you think that it would be more preferred to move the boat or leave the boat and move the dock and the 25 feet or the 53-foot pile, we maybe could consider that if that's the concern is just the pile. But the dock is, all we can do is move the dock on the other side in the setback, because the city code allows for the structure to be in the side yard setback, but not the boat.
right. It's got
So
to be
we
inside
can
the
put the
setback.
dock on. We can put the dock on either side. So if you're concerned that the 1201 can't get in because of the pile, we could flip the dock on the other side in the setback and put the pile on that side, and that would just mean we would have to try to put the 25-foot boat parallel, kind of like the neighbor is doing on to the right.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anybody else from the board?
I do, Chair. Steve Whitten, quick. Tyler, I think Jenna mentioned at the beginning of her presentation that your client has lived there for some time. Was that correct?
No, the client has not lived here. The client's been a resident of South Florida for 40 years.
Okay, so this is somebody that just bought the residence?
Correct. He bought.
So, no, so I guess, and again, it's not my business how folks handle themselves, but to Ed's point, somebody bought a 50-foot waterfront, assuming that they were going to put a 60-foot boat there, plus another one. That's not our business to decide, but it does seem like a significant footprint and a relatively small waterfront.
Yeah, and I understand that, but within keeping in mind that he's looking around at his neighbors, thinking he can do the same, not knowing that.
I hear. Yeah, I hear. Okay.
All right, why don't we, Jimmy?
I had a
then
question,
Norbert.
Tyler. If you could go back to the slide that showed the triangle and the 10-foot setback that we were looking at before. Is it the neighbor to the west, their small dock and that boat, is that inside? No, keep going up to the
distance aerial.
Satellite, the satellite one. The one that shows, that one. The boat right to their west, would that actually, because it looks like it would actually fall inside of their riparian rights, that they're too far into the neighbor as well, which kind of gives it the illusion of that you couldn't that you would be landlocked because of that boat. So is that boat pushing into the neighbor to the southwest?
You're talking about the existing vessel?
The vessel that's just to the right of, you pointed out before, the azimuth to the right of it.
Over here? No, the azimuth was to the left.
No, to the left, yes, that boat. Then the boat right to the right of that. That boat and that finger pier appear to be sticking out into the riparian rights of the homeowner to the
1201.
To 1201.
No, so 1201 actually, the boat you're referring to is their property line goes kind of almost due north.
Oh, it does.
The 1201 actually has a triangle as well.
But it doesn't go to the center of the lake?
It would go to pretty close to that same point. there, you can see on there. So see how their point is going to be up in, near where the green lettering is, and then the other point's going to come out at an angle.
Yes, they have a much smaller triangle, actually.
They have a square, on the left side, they're more flat. And then on the right side, they would have the pinch point.
Tyler, whoever moves into 1201 is what he's saying. Basically, 1201, that person over there, no way, shape, or form can have a boat parallel to shore. They have to make sure that they put theirs the same way as the other one, so perpendicular to the shore for sure, because there wouldn't be no way that they could come in and dock a boat that way.
That's correct. 1201 is going to have perpendicular mooring, which is what they have now.
The new person that would be buying that property would be limited to not only the size, but also on the configuration of how they would put the boat in. They could not put a boat in parallel like that other boat is right now. There's no way that you could dock one like that. They'd have to make sure that all the boats in that area basically are perpendicular to the shore, correct?
Yeah, 1201 would, if they were to go to a marginal type mooring on that site instead of the finger pier that they have now, it would be similar to what we're saying, where you'd only have about 20 or 30 feet to moor a boat.
You're limited to the size of the boat.
Everybody is.
And that's why you're going perpendicular, because you don't have enough room on these corner parcels to moor a normal sized vessel. It'd have to be a 20 to 30 foot boat.
Okay.
Yeah, they're just really maxing out with going with a 60 boat
Yeah.
in that spot. I mean,
Correct.
Really, really maxing out the whole thing.
Especially when you add the 25 footer into it also.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
so-
and like I said, if, that's something we would need to reconsider to come back. We would certainly acknowledge that, if we needed to get rid of the 25, we could do that. And like I was talking, I think it was Ed brought up, flipping the structure on the other side, so that the 53-foot pile would be on the north side instead of on the south side.
Okay, let's give the public an opportunity to speak on this. Do we have anybody from the public that would like to speak? Okay, we have two participants. I saw Tika, followed by Michael. Tika, please.
Hi, this is Tika Vandenherk and Richard PC. We're the owners of 2631 Northeast 12th Street. My husband speaks.
Hi, yes, we have the, you'll see on the image, the azimuth to the left of 1207, to the west, sorry. And we are definitely opposed to this. Will impede our access to our property as well as all the neighbors in that immediately to the east of us, including 1201 will be totally landlocked. There's definitely no extraordinary circumstance here whatsoever. It'll be a navigational hazard. It's going to impede dock access. Everyone will begin to add more of these piers if this becomes approved. And the lake just simply isn't that big. We just did a complete dock refit, triple cluster pilings, new seawall, everything permitted, all within 25 feet. It works fine. This property is just simply too small, has too little waterfront to support a very large boat at all. And that's really all my comments.
Thank you. Was it a Michael that's next?
Yes, good afternoon. Can you hear me?
We can.
Yes, thank you for making this meeting available to us, the public. My name is Michael Strawbridge, and I own the property just to the west of the prior speaker at 2625 Northeast 12th Street. And I would like to register my opposition to this variance on several grounds. When I purchased my home at 2625 Northeast 12th Street, this subject property was available for sale. My wife and I looked closely at this property and determined that this waterfront was so narrow that it wouldn't be an appropriate place for us with plans for a 40-foot boat. So we went shopping for property, looking for what would be adequate for our boat before we purchased. So we ended up buying, as I mentioned, 2 doors over. I'd like to point out that I feel that this application is being made in somewhat of a disingenuous fashion, that the current owner of this property did not have a boat there previously and did not own any structures that were there before now that exceeded the 25 feet. And that was represented earlier in the initial presentation. This extended pier and piles would make it very difficult for the neighbor to do the same thing if they were to ask for the same variance. And as others have mentioned, this will only continue on around the lake with people asking for longer and longer piers and piles. I also took note of the fact that the presenter showed other properties in the lake, and if she could pull up all those other examples of piers and piles that were put way out into the lake that were not permitted, that they are offering those as a reason to allow these when those were not put in legally or permitted. They are there. At least 2 out of those boats are derelict vessels. They are non-moving vessels. They haven't moved in years. This lake is very easy for others to continue to place vessels in there because law enforcement rarely comes down there to check. So I'm very concerned about this being a legal precedent set based off of what has been illegal building in the past. Additionally, I, like my neighbor, spent an enormous amount of time and energy redoing our seawall and our dock. We went through the entire permitting process, followed all the rules, and it took almost a year for us to complete these. And we feel as though we have the protection that is necessary to dock in what is a very protected waterway. Additionally, on top of that, in the process of applying for our dock and seawall renovation, we were told that there was significant environmental issues with putting structures and boats over the water with various wildlife and plant growth on the bottom being at risk. So this is an additional issue that I think is concerning. This lake is home to all kinds of natural wildlife that come in. It was a natural lake. This was not a built canal. And I think that this extended pier would also degrade the natural features of our beautiful lake. I thank you all for hearing us out, and I hope that this will be denied.
Thank you. Anybody else from the public? Okay, let's bring it back to the board for some more discussion. Does anybody have any more questions or comments for Tyler?
I've got a comment for Michael, who just spoke, not relating to this, but the police, when they come down, typically don't look for code violations. And they really rely on the neighbors to report code violations. So if you see something, feel free to call code, and then code will call the police and take care of it. The police typically don't look for code violations. They're looking for, marine safety issues and things. So feel free to call code on that. Thanks.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Chair Steve Whitten. It's interesting when, and we talked about not setting precedents, et cetera. And I understand that. And I also understand it's probably not the role of this board to decide how large a boat an individual can buy. But again, I just look at this and I come back to the fact that you have a 50-foot frontage, which you knew full well was existing. And the idea that you would assume that you could put a 60-foot boat. By the way, it could be a 70-foot boat there. I mean, again, it's however you choose to moor it safely. And I think there are certainly precedents that suggest there are larger vessels there. I'm just, again, concerned that we're starting to max out some of these areas. And I don't have a lot of trouble with the pier as much as I have, again, with the mooring pile.
Feel better if it was more on the northern side of that?
Yep. Yep.
The rest of the. Anybody else?
Chair Ted Morley. I guess that's a question for Tyler if he wants to pull this back out and present a different orientation of the pier. He had talked about that as an option. I think we've heard a lot of opposition tonight and a lot of comments about the mooring pile, the orientation and configuration, the two slips versus the single slip. There's a lot of conversation here. So I think stuff's kind of worked out here. I'm happy to vote on it as is, but obviously that's the applicant's option.
Sure. Yeah, I would suggest he pulls it.
Yeah, I appreciate that, board, and appreciate all the feedback and comments. Certainly we could, not request a waiver, keep it everything at 25 feet, like the one neighbor who has the 55 azimuth that basically is med-style mooring with an anchor out into the bay to hold the boat steady. But that's not what we do. We try to design things that are safe and for the vessel that the owner wants. And we certainly would like to withdraw the application and would come back with a proposal where we would perhaps move the finger pier to the north side and the mooring pile to accommodate that same vessel, just so that we would provide better access to the south neighbors. And we'd be happy to look at that and get with the applicant on that as well. So I appreciate that feedback, and we'll look to come to you next month.
Thank you, Tyler. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, Tyler.
Tyler, real quick, Ted Morley again. I just want to quickly applaud your professionalism on how you present things and your efforts to do the right thing. It's something that I admire about that. And I do think it's a great idea to pull it and discuss it more and then come back to us. So thank you for that.
No problem. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you.
I agree.
You can thank Jenna. She did all the hard work.
Thank you, Jenna.
Thank you, Jenna.
Thank you, board.
Okay. We're going to move on to item number 9, which is old and new business. And I'm going to open up with something here. In the last couple meetings, we've talked about that area on the new river next to the Icon building, and the new restaurant Salt 7 and the new riverfront there. And Barry's brought this up, a few others have as well, and some of the problems that is presenting without having some type of railing there as people are pulling up to that area and docking their boats when it's really not a dockable space. And as that area is a holding pattern for larger boats as they come in, as they're coming past one another, that's a space for them to get by, whether it be the Jungle Queen or the Carrie B docking or large yachts being towed up and down the river, or just waiting for the 3rd Avenue Bridge as other, even smaller boats are going by. That's a significant holding pattern for boats. And I think that we need to talk about that and making sure that that doesn't become an area of for more docks and for having a space there. I think that would be, if we want to talk about an impediment to safety and navigation, I think that would be a real big problem. So I don't know if anybody has any comments on that. Yeah,
I do. Yeah. I was aware of this for now a couple months, of the dock there not having rails put up. Became aware, and then I had an incident for myself about 3 weeks ago where I was out in my boat in the river, 39-foot boat, and lost my steering. and I had to lay to a boat just on the south side of the river, just across or just west of the tunnel, in sight of the Stranahan house. And it was scary. It was on a weekend, and I was just, moored off of another boat. And there was boats coming around. There was boats under tow, and we were hanging fenders over, waiting to get smashed, by another boat coming around there. The current was ripping. Watching boats go around those turns is hairy to say the least. Kind of just waiting for Towboat US to come and get us, was like a long time. And so it made me think a lot more about it too. And going back, into the history, of it was in 2015, this board was concerned about this as well. And the marine industry, as well as the Coast Guard. We had even on a water taxi had taken out a Coast Guard contingent looking, at the river at that point, talking about this specific issue, which was the building of the Riverwalk walkway, that was going to be there, not a dock, a walkway. And it was a big concern, to everyone as far as the safety issue of what that was. The permit was finally issued, really, over objections, but with the, the terms of it that it would not be used as a dock. And that was the way that it was. And that was the mitigation that was given to us for the safety reason of not having docks there. And it really didn't become aware that the permit wasn't followed through correctly with handrails or blocking, as far as access for the dock, until it just recently kind of came up that people were using it as a dock. And then a sign, a single sign, has been put up, no docking. People are still docking there. So even aside from trying to allow docking there now, there shouldn't be docking there, period. Not to have, it just shouldn't be allowed. And it really needs to be corrected. It's very obvious if and I'm sure everyone on this board knows from going through there, you've never seen more fenders in your life on all the boats that are, tied up there permanently all the time. And they're all, and as I pulled up and I'm leaning to, I'm looking at all the damage to the boat that I was tied up to from boats smashing into it. So all the boats have damage to the boats from boats running into them, in that turn area. Also, it's been not so bad as far as with the train, not running for the last year. Once the train starts running, that is a turning basin. That's a holding basin. That's where people pass. That's the wide spot of the river, which is part of the reason why it makes it so crazy with the currents, that are in there as well, being right over the tunnel as well. So it's I'm all for destinations, being able to go somewhere in my boat, and go to a bar, go to a restaurant, go to a hangout, by boat is a great thing. But in this case, it's a dangerous thing as far as for, trying to open that up to boats. The Marine Industry Association, and we passed it, Andrew passed it out to the board. We wrote a letter to the commission for this. It may not go through the commission. This is actually more of a DEP thing, or the Coast Guard thing. But we'd like, we want to at least make our commissioners, aware of the opposition from the Marine Industry Association, hence writing a letter. And, I personally would like this board to write a communication to the commission, being in opposition or being in support of previous board, the previous will of this board, from 6 years ago. And that I'd like to, if we could do that. So I would, and I actually have crafted one just because I know how long it takes us to write a letter, on the fly, while we're here. And if I may, I could read that and get input from anyone on what it is.
Why don't you go ahead and read, Jimmy, and then we'll get some.
Okay. It's a little bit long, but not too long. By ordinance of C2074, one of the Marine Advisory Board's top responsibility is that of waterway safety and traffic control on the waterways of Fort Lauderdale. That's our board's thing. As mitigation for the concerns of this board, the U.S. Coast Guard, the Marine Industry Association, The DEP added to the specific condition prohibiting dockage along this section of Riverwalk. DEP permit issued January 25th, 2016. Specific conditions, operation and maintenance activities, number 15. Within 10 days of completion of dock construction, permit handrails and no mooring signs shall be installed along all portions of 3,553 square feet, irregular shaped concrete boardwalk adjacent to non-mooring areas. Handrails shall be constructed to eliminate access to the pier by boaters and shall be maintained for the life of the facility. That's already written. That's a rule. That's what the permit, says. And in our letter, for whatever reason, this was not done by the city and needs to be corrected. Handrails must be installed to eliminate access. This area of New River over the Kinney Tunnel twists and turns, has strong currents, and is used as a holding passing area and turning basin by large vessels. The boats docked immediately to the west display evidence of the danger with many dings, dents, scratches, and broken hardware along their hulls, as well as the extraordinary amount of fenders and bumpers hanging from their sides in anticipation of being hit. Boats being damaged, and more importantly, people being injured by vessels colliding is a reason for not allowing vessels to dock at this location. The Marine Advisory Board is strongly opposed to allowing dockage at this location and strongly recommends full compliance of the DEP permit specific to condition 15.
Mr. Chair.
Yep.
I'd like to second Jimmy's motion to have that communication presented. And I guess we can have a discussion and vote from the board to see if they want anything changed on it. But I feel very strongly about that as well. As you know, my background is safety and navigation, and that's an area that has always been a problem. And it's increasingly difficult now, especially once Brightline gets back up and running. So Jimmy, I like your letter. I think it's a good communication to reinforce the existing moratorium that's there and perhaps request additional measures to ensure that we don't have more dockage and more problems there. So I second the motion as it stands.
I agree with you, Jimmy, and I agree with you, Ted. And one thing to really keep in mind is that when that Brightline gets back up and running, it's gonna be a whole different ballgame. It's gonna be a lot worse than it is now. So that being said, is there some comments from the rest of the board on Jimmy's letter?
Yeah, Chair, Jimmy, tremendous letter. I have a quick question just with respect to the railing problem. Is that, do you know whether or not that is the responsibility of the town, or is that something that the developer was supposed to complete and they simply didn't do that?
Andrew?
This is Andrew. That was a condition of the permit. So I'm not sure why the railing is not in place.
Certainly seems to me that if they, obviously the developer didn't complete the work, that's the first step there, is to identify who's responsible for the work there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which is, I crafted a letter so that it's opposing the dockage, allowing dockage there, but also enforcing the permit as far as putting railings up along that stretch.
Absolutely.
Hey, I guess a couple things I would say, you guys. Jimmy, that's a great letter. And I'm certainly like you and lots of you on the board here. I love going to destinations in and around our city. But just to put a little emphasis on it, there's a yacht came up 3 days ago, threw some lines over on the pilings and ripped 2 of these pilings off. I mean, they're not made even for docking in terms of, and it was a good sized boat. But as Sergeant Mills mentioned earlier, I mean, the amount of traffic is just amazing, and the congestion, and as we've all mentioned, this railroad bridge hasn't gone up and down like a yo-yo yet, and that's going to be a substantial issue. My water taxi operation operates off of that dock because we are licensed to do that as part of the permit. But we got stuck on the dock about 3 weeks ago for 20 minutes. We just couldn't get off the dock because of boat traffic. So it is a very heavily congested area, and so that's just my 2 cents.
Thank you.
This is Deirdre. I think the letter's fantastic. I fully support it. I agree with what everyone is saying. It's a very congested area. I think whatever we can do to have a voice in the decision, we should do.
Okay. Thank Thank you. So we did have a motion to approve the letter. Do we have a second?
Second.
Yes.
Okay. A second from.
Second. Third.
Would you just take a voice vote, Bridget? Does that
Yes,
work for you?
but it was my understanding that Mr. Harrison made the motion and Mr. Morley seconded it.
No, Mr. Morley made the motion to present the letter to the commission and Norbert seconded.
Okay, yeah, you can just do a voice vote.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
And I'll give the letter to.
Okay, great. I look forward to the commission to getting some feedback and some changes. Moving forward, do we have any old or new business?
Yeah, I want to, let me reiterate a little bit on maybe a little history. I was on the Marine Advisory Board, and from my previous commission, a question once came up on the upland part of a variance. And at that time, we were told that it was out of the scope of the Marine Advisory Board that code and standards to address any upland parts. So the actual construction of the dock and what materials they use and everything else is not of our concern. If there's a private fence or something over there that's out over the seawall, that was not any of our concern, that would be code. And the advisory board's concerned at the time, which was explained to me, is safety, navigation, environmental, and maybe to recommend to the commission any concerns or changes to the code that they should be advised of. So if this commission is in agreement with that commission, then noise, a blocking of view, boat ownership at the dock, or somebody running a business out of there, at that point is not any concern for the Marine Advisory Board, and it should not be used for us to make a decision. That should be of code and staff. That's what I was informed of. So I would imagine this commission seems to be following the same principle. So actually we are on the hook for navigation, safety, and environmental. Anything else?
You know, Andrew, maybe you could
That was
send.
the standard setting in there. So
Yeah, I agree with you. Norbert.
anything upland was
Doesn't have anything to
that
do
was before, I think, Mr. Cube was the term that was in there that commission was brought up. But we even had to table that at one time, and a lawyer got involved, and that was what was specifically said, that's what our goal is, that we're not even to consider views and things over there that are anything on the upland.
That's correct. Section 834 speaks to the
What's
board's. That's correct. Section 834, Chapter 834 speaks to the board's duties. Does not include upland considerations.
Andrew, could you that list of what we are to consider? Could you make a copy of that and send it to our board just to refresh everybody's memory of what our responsibilities are?
I can do that tomorrow morning. Yes.
That'd be great.
Yeah, that was like you said, anything other than what was I just discussed I was told was not any concern for the advisory board. And so, you know, that would be parties or anything else and stuff on it, that if people would come in and say these people were having a party next door or anything else, or the main thing that we seem to be getting letters on is obstruction of view.
We got a lot of those.
That is not part of our jurisdiction.
Correct.
So if you get, so disregard those letters.
Yeah, Andrew, also the ordinance that I referenced in that, which I dug out just to write that letter, which I was given by when I got on this board a long time ago, was the C2074 ordinance number.
Sure, I can include that when I send out to the board. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Norbert. Any other old or new business?
Says we regulate surfboarding too.
Put that in there. Any old or new business?
Yeah,
I have a question of.
Chuck, Cliff, go ahead. Cliff.
Yeah, I'd just like to mention, possibly the board may want to think of crafting a letter of thanks to Sergeant Mills on his retiring and for everything he's done for the city and everything I think he's a gem, everything he's done for this board. So I don't know how that happens. I don't know if it's customary, a letter or a plaque, but I think we should recognize him in some way before he gets away.
I second that, Cliff.
All right.
That's a good idea.
So I'll have a discussion with the chair and we'll come up with a
We'll
plan.
come up with something. Good idea. Thank you, Cliff.
Okay.
Great idea, Cliff. Roseanne Lovell here. Chair Henderson, fellow board members, Jimmy, awesome letter. I love the preemptive, saving all of our time to draft it in advance. That was amazing. And Norbert, appreciate your always diligent effort at things and defining our role. Just wanted to throw it back to the chair and the board that it's now approaching the 2-hour mark. And we have clearly vetted 3 dock waivers. And I was just curious what everybody's thoughts were as to the commission's remarks of March 16th, that we are a superfluous rubber stamp. I don't feel like a rubber stamp this evening. And,
No, and
just throwing that back at you as to how we communicate to the board the role that we do play.
well, and I agree with you, Roseanne. And we're all volunteering our time here. And again, I don't believe that the commission is aware of any of the waivers that we do push back. So in their eyes, they will have seen one granted waiver today, and that's it. And I don't know if they're even aware or watching this that we've been here for 2 hours and did push back on 2.
So, I mean, is a practical next step, Deidre's a go-getter and pointing out my redhead, kitty, what would be a practical next step to say, hey, dear commissioner that appointed me, last night we took 2 hours of our time and we vetted 3 waivers. But because by the time it gets to the commission, the hard work has been done. We pushed back. We did not approve, right, 2 out of the 3, whatever it was. I'm just saying, we need not let not March 16th go the day after the Ides of March. So beware of March 16th. How do we not let that fade in our memories? And we are not I value all of your time, and you think about what Jimmy put into his thing, and Norbert, we're not a rubber stamp. So wanting the commission to understand our role.
Yeah, if we have feedback for the commission, what I would say is, they've given us a very vague law, a very vague standard. It's extraordinary circumstances, which could mean anything. If they have a problem with what we are doing, that they need to define what extraordinary circumstances mean.
I think we need to help them define that. But
I agree with you. I absolutely agree with you. But it needs to be defined, as opposed to asking us to define it by precedent. Because as was pointed out several times this evening, each case is unique.
It really is.
We need standards by which to measure each case. And saying extraordinary circumstances is it's not a sufficient measure. It's not a sufficient standard.
Yeah, but that's why, honestly, that's why there is a quorum, and that's why there's a group here, is to subjectively interpret some of the regulations. And when Chair says we spent over 2 hours here, or Roseanne did, the fact is, yes, we're giving of our time, and we do spend a great deal of time. Ironically, this evening, it would have seemed that we've been reactionary to the thoughts of the board, that we were too easy before. A great deal of time went into these. And I think the problem is we've had some softballs in previous months that were easy to approve. The ones that at least 2 of the 3 we worked on tonight were quite difficult. So I appreciate everybody's time, and I agree with everyone. I do hope that the board is aware of how much effort goes into this and how much time we put into each individual request.
Yeah, we should take a screensaver of all of Andrew's emails today with all the letters. Yeah, inbox.
I think the message will
all
get
of you.
Thank you.
Happy Air and Sea Show.
And happy Mother's Day to everyone.
Happy Air Show. Air Show.
Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Have a nice weekend, everyone.
Awesome. All right, guys. Thank